my friends on the other side is what they say is wrong with America. They keep telling us America's failing. They're wrong. I've got news for them. America has the strongest economy in the world right now, today.
Joining me now, Axel Kaiser. He is the author of the book, The Street Economist. Really simplifies things for you if you're trying to understand what you're looking at. Okay, Axel, I realize we have the largest economy in the world, though China is gaining. Does that make it the strongest? Do we have the strongest economy in the world?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, in a sense, you could argue that you have higher degrees of freedom in the United States when you compare it to China or Russia or India, and you have rule of law that is, has been deteriorating over time. But I believe that the challenges that the United States face, like, for instance, the debt, the amount of debt that the country has, and the loss of competitiveness, the loss of competitiveness as vis-a-vis the other developing nations like India and even China, are huge challenges. And so it's not an argument you could easily make in the sense that you are doing things right. I think the United States is doing things very poorly compared to its potential, and it's in decline. And that's the main point we have to focus on. It's a declining economy. And yeah, there are worse places, of course, but that doesn't mean you are doing things right.
Axel, can you elaborate and take your time, as much time as you need on this, on the debt and why that matters and why that's potentially catastrophic? Because, look, I go off on the debt all the time, but I fully understand it's not something you can make people care about because they've been warned about the debt their whole lives and they've never really seen any kind of a difference in their daily life. So they just assume this is going to go on without end. Why is all this debt a problem?
You know, the United States has the dollar, which is a world reserve currency, and it makes things easier for Americans because everyone in the world is demanding the currency. But now you are seeing a movement among governments from other parts of the world to get rid of the dollar and not to buy as much debt anymore. And that means that it will pressure interest rates up in the case of the United States. And there will come a point, I think, in the future where the US will default on its debt. And this happened in the past. Remember, Richard Nixon, he got rid of the gold standard because he, needed to print money in order to fund the Great Society programs and that he inherited from Lyndon Johnson, and then also the Vietnam War and other things. And now you have a huge government, and 2/3 of the budget of the federal government are what we can call entitlements and social rights. So it's very hard for the political class to come to an agreement in order to cut spending because most of it has nothing to do with defense or things like that. It's mostly giving people money and so-called social rights, which is, once you do that, it's very hard to get rid of those. And Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security are going to be huge problems down the road. And actually, there is a good economist, Lawrence Kotlikoff, who has calculated that the US is already broke and you have like 1,000% of GDP unfunded liabilities. There is no way you are going to be able to pay that. And so it could have catastrophic consequences if you don't deal with that soon. And, you could lose the dollar the dollar could lose the status as a reserve currency in the world. And that would mean you would have much higher interest rates in the US. You would have an economy that would contract probably, and also, a currency crisis. And that would be not the end game, because you could somehow try to recover from that huge crisis, but it would have catastrophic social and economic consequences, and probably a lot of violence too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not the only country. No, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But we're not the only country saddled with debt by any means. We like to talk about our own problems and act like every other country, India, China, all of them, Russia, they're all doing hunky-dory, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
Yeah, it's true. We have a debt problem in the world, and that has to do with the fact that we have a, fiat currency system that was really generalized when Nixon got rid of the gold standard in 1971, because before that, the dollar was anchored to gold and governments could demand, I think it was $35 per ounce of gold in exchange from the Federal Reserve. And so you had dollars, as of, France did have reserves, or other countries, they would send the dollars and they would get the gold, the equivalent in gold. And but since 1971, we have a fiat currency system everywhere in the world, and that has allowed the massive expansion of debt and money printing everywhere. And I'm someone who knows the history of Latin America very well. I can tell you there is only one way this will end up, and it's by with a huge crisis. The system is going to blow up at some point, and you will have probably people knowing. The experts are already talking about this. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they come together and say we need currency reform all over the West. I don't know what China and Russia are going to do, but I think Europe, UK, maybe Japan. Japan has 260% GDP debt. So it's a huge problem. And also the United States, they will come and say, let's agree on a different monetary system, because this is really unsustainable. And it's also costing the economy a lot in terms of productivity and misallocation of resources. So it's really damaging the quality of life of average people everywhere. And you are not seeing the degrees of economic growth that you used to see in the post-war period. And this is also undermining the faith in democracy. So you have many problems that are, linked to this fiat currency system. And, if they don't do something about it, especially the United States, the outcome will be very ugly.
Yeah, I'd say so. Axel, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
I have great news. If you enjoyed that, I have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. Whatever I do, it'll be right there on YouTube. So go subscribe today.